Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts and I'm here with Danny Vega. I'm in Seattle, you're out in Florida, so we're furthest away possible in North America to talk about carnivore today and how it really works, and nose to tail, I would say head to tail, nose to tail, and all the research, because you guys are the fat fueled family. So we're gonna kind of give some truth bombs and maybe clear up some questions people have and dive deep in the next hour, and you've got great slides. So thanks for coming on to share this information, Mr. Danny Vega.
Thank you so much. Seriously, I'm so grateful for every single opportunity I get to talk about this stuff, especially like I see, I mean, obviously it's Veganuary or whatever that's called. And it's also World Carnivore Month, but there are some considerations that I like to share when it comes to eating carnivore, because on top of the potential micronutrient deficiencies that you may experience, there's also some considerations for if you're training hard that I'd like to talk about, and obviously we can go into that in the presentation that I sent you. But there are some of these blind spots, and it's not to say that you won't do well eating ribeyes and ground beef. You very well may do very, very well, but the problem is with someone like me, like there's issues with cramping if you're not well hydrated and you're not paying attention to electrolytes. There's also sometimes, in my opinion, the need to bring in some fiber to package any type of toxins that you have if you're detoxing. I definitely noticed that. I did a liver detox at the end of the year where it was just supporting my body's natural detox pathways with food and a few supplements. And I noticed that when I brought in that fiber, it did a really good job of packaging things and helping me eliminate them, which was an eye-opener for me, because, you know, a lot of us in the carnivore community, we talk about how, you know, when you eat meat, it's just so well absorbed and there's no waste and there's nothing left. I just found that, you know, if there are some toxins, maybe there is the need of fiber, something to bind those things as you're activating those toxins, and then you're getting into phase 2 detox. You need something to help. You need, of course, glycine, and then the fiber I found was very helpful as well.
Yeah, so that's what we'll dive into today. I think a lot of times people just follow, you know, watching you on Instagram and follow other people that they read and doing carnivore, and they don't really, well, even keto and whatever people do, vegan, it's just, it's N equals 1. And I keep trying to stress to everybody that everyone's different and you're a bio-individual. No one has the same makeup as you. So experiment. And as you're finding out, yeah, I don't have to be just eliminate everything. If I add some fiber and have some glycine, some amino acids that I can get from bone broth, you know, adding these things, you have to tweak, and everyone's experimenting. So everyone that's sharing this information, and you've got great research to give us as well. But I think people just try to copy what someone else is doing and expect the same results. And you lift heavy. You're an athlete. You're lifting heavy weights every day, challenging yourself. Other people, my listeners, might be more endurance athletes. And so we got to look at that. Also, I'm big into, just finished Stacey Sims' book on Women Are Not Small Men, her book Roar, and how women are different than men. So what works for you isn't going to work for Mara and even for me, and everyone needs to just take what they can and apply it and experiment. So that's kind of takeaway. And then I just want to add, you know, before we'll go into your slides, but the holistic method is how I found that, you know, you talk a lot about too. It's not just what you eat, but I keep saying every episode of the Whole Athlete podcast, it's how you eat it, when you eat it. So timing and time restricted eating, fasting, and, you know, slowing down, chewing your food, all of that part of it's so important to look at, not just, all right, eat these foods, see how you feel. The goal is to eat real food and balance your blood sugar. But if you have other health concerns, we'll talk about that today. But also, you know, the exercising, the sleep, stress, movement, digestion and gut health, hydration, and happiness, gratitude, playing, laughing. These are the 8 elements that I find really to train the whole athlete from the inside out. We need to address these different elements. So today we're going to focus on nutrition and how that can heal gut health and improve a lot of inflammation in your body, and talking about your perspective, Danny, on from your experiences, you know, lifting weights and bodybuilding. So just want to touch on people. You can, if you're live on the webinar, you can join in and type in questions and we'll get to them afterwards. And you can see on the Zoom webinar, there's a place to type them in. So I'll look at those at the end. So just think about how we can address your questions and what you're looking for to improve fat loss, improve performance, maybe for athlete, maybe just daily life, but also, you know, I'm focused on longevity. You know, performance is huge, but I want to improve the aging process, and I'm on a goal not to have wrinkles on my face.
Of course.
So
of course.
I'm looking at the long term. As I turned 48 last month, I'm just like all about the aging process. So Danny, I'm going to start your slides. I know we can just tell me when to switch, but the topic is we're going to go into is ancestral nutrition, how to use a nose to tail approach to maximize your health and performance. And I must add before I give it to you that I just started eating meat because I was hanging out with Danny and all these other carnivores on the low carb cruise last May. And then I went to KetoCon and everyone is into meat. And I found, you know, I've been afraid of animals, eating animals, and for 30 years, and I got home and my body was asking for protein. So I just started adding grass-fed meat, steak, and I just ordered Butcher Box. And I do need to take like 10 to 15 HCl supplements because my body doesn't know how to break down protein very well. So I have some digestive issues, but Danny did influence me. I'm not doing the nose to tail, I must admit. So step we're going to talk about, I'm not there yet, but baby steps. So yeah. Danny, I'll let you start here and then we'll just kind of have a conversation about this. If you don't know Danny, let's have you introduce yourself. Here's your slide on your background.
Yeah, so there I am, you know, looking sideways and just loving my life. And you know, about me, you know, we have the Fat Fueled Family podcast with my lovely wife Maura, who, by the way, I wanted to add, one of the reasons why she doesn't share her meals is because she doesn't want people to just copy her. She wants people to think about nutrition and think about it, how it affects them. We want you guys to think. It's one of the hardest things to do, to provide context and to provide, you know, that just customization for the individual. It's great to look at the Instagram feed and see, you know, meal ideas, but don't just copy someone else. You know, internalize this and be intentional about it. My background, I played college football at Columbia University. I got my master's in physiology. It's called the Human Performance Program at the University of Florida. Very, very awesome program for any of you who want to go into a master's program and not focus on research and actually get the practical side of things. I was ranked in the top 25 in the country in powerlifting, indoor rowing. I have a few state records and I competed in that. And I've been doing jiu-jitsu now for about a year. And I also created the Keto Muscle Intelligence program with my best friend and partner, Ben Pekulski, where we teach people how to train optimally on a ketogenic diet, because even if you're eating zero sugar and intermittent fasting, you could very well be burning all this sugar because of the way you're training. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Perfect. Yeah, you've got lots of experience. And I love that you guys are not showing meals. I think it gives people ideas, but I keep finding, especially New Year and, you know, these keto for beginner group pages and different groups on Facebook, people keep trying to replicate what someone else does. And as we said in the beginning, you need to remember it's N=1.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's kind of go into your Ancestral Eating 101.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we're talking about this is, especially nowadays when we face, you know, global hunger, we're trying to feed the world. If you are closely connected to your food sources, especially if you're reaching out to your local farmer and you know how they're raising the animals, you know how they're treating them, you know what they're feeding them, so you're able to contribute to a sustainable and even regenerative form of agriculture that can help us feed the world and not, you know, hit this crisis in 2050 that everyone's talking about. Of course, we have a strong focus on animal protein. Number one, because we know that that's the best absorbed protein. And number two, because, you know, you are made of protein. So if you want to put on muscle, meaning if you want to lean out quote unquote get toned, you need to add muscle. So the best way to do that is with animal protein. Plus that animal fat is going to help you absorb all the vitamins you take in, even if you're not eating carnivore. You know, if you really want to absorb all the vitamins in those vegetables, you want to cook them in animal fat so you can have them packaged with that fat. Of course, healthy fat sources, we stay away from all these fake processed hydrogenated oils, Crisco, soy, all that stuff. We also are very focused on seasonal eating because we know that our ancestors, even back then, their microbiomes changed as the season went on. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to eat the same way the whole year round. And, you know, I'm presenting on this tomorrow in Nebraska. And one of the things that, you know, if you eat the right way and in the right season and you're eating the right foods, these seasonal allergies that people get, you won't get that. You'll be, you know, prepared. Your buddies, which is your probiotics in your gut, are going to help you fight off those allergies and all that other stuff. Of course, very interesting. I saw this podcast where I think it was Ben Greenfield had an author who I think he's an anthropologist, and he spoke about the fact that, interestingly, nowadays people burn around the same amount of calories as we did, you know, 10,000 years ago, except the reason why is because, number one, our brains are processing way more information and there's an energy need there. And number two, we do this weird thing where we drive to this box and we go inside the box and we lift weights and we put them down. And I mean, that is awesome, but focusing on movement is very important because we want to be moving all day. You don't want to be sedentary athlete syndrome where you go in the gym for 90 minutes and then you sit down the rest of the day. And of course, you know, being connected with the food that you eat, respecting the food that you eat, knowing that that animal was treated well, because even though we're eating the animals, we want to make sure that we're respecting these animals and respecting their contributions to our nutrition and our health.
Well, and I think these are important things to look at because, you know, there's that movie going around, Game Changers, that's confusing. Get this whole war on, you know, which end of the spectrum, and it's like total vegan or carnivore. It's like, how opposite can you get? So I think a lot of people get confused, and, you know, it's being open-minded to hearing the research on both sides and looking at who sponsors the research and the articles and videos. So let's move on to number one. The ancestors had a close connection with their food slide.
Yeah, this was really interesting to see that our ancestors, and this is a lot of the work of Miki Ben-Dor, who's Israeli, and he's done research on just looking at, you know, historical protein consumption. And he saw that, you know, 40 to 60% of the energy that these people ate, meaning the calories, were coming from animal products. And muscle meat was just a portion of it. They weren't going to the store and buying packs of steaks. They were eating the whole animal. And these tribes, and this continues, you know, until modern times, they knew that there were parts in the animal that were, number one, of greater nutritional value. They knew that they could use the animal as a form of medicine. For example, like, I'm dealing with some histamine issues right now. Yesterday, I had, you know, ground beef with bacon in bone broth and egg yolks, and I added some Ancestral or Grassland Nutrition. It's a company out of Australia. These ultra concentrated kidney chunks that, you know, you put in, and it kind of tastes and has the consistency of like mushrooms in the broth. And the reason why I included it is because it has something called DAO, diamine oxidase, which is a really good enzyme that helps you battle histamine. So you don't have to go to the store and get that antihistamine. What else? So we talked about how they use food as medicine. What else? Organ meats, liver, all of that stuff, cysteine. So you can see all of these things, they're found in animal products. So that's kind of how they ate. And although they didn't have antibiotics, they didn't have modern medicine, they also didn't have cavities. They didn't have, you know, blood pressure that increased over age. They generally, even in modern groups that we see, blood pressure tends to decrease over age with these ancestral groups who are still following this lifestyle.
So it's funny, whenever I say something that I'm doing a webinar or podcast and talking about ancestral health, and nutrition, people always say their lifespan was very short. So how was that work? But I said,
Yeah.
they get killed. People probably got killed by an animal attacking them or something, not because of illness,
Or
disease.
childbirth, or yeah, or even like, an infection. I mean, unfortunately, yeah, they didn't have things that we take for granted. It's interesting. Like, you think about if we were like in an end of world situation and someone gets an infection, they can die. I mean, and this is what these people went through.
Yeah. So it's not because of the food they're eating killed them. It's other reasons. Because I think people say, oh, they only lived, they're 30 years old or something. Why should we eat what they did? Because they didn't last till 80 years old. So
Yeah, well,
anyways.
I'd rather go at 100 miles an hour and crash into a wall at 30 than, be stuck at 5 miles per hour and, be on a walker when I'm 80. I'll tell you, I'll take that any day.
Yeah, me too. I know. So number 2, our ancestors focused on animal protein, nose to tail, and talk about a little bit that. This is my area. I'm trying to be open-minded. I might have to talk
Well, I
like
really,
I'm eating flowers or something, not eating liver.
well,
Heart.
I gotta tell you seriously, Debbie, like I commend you for, changing this, because these are, ingrained habits and ingrained things that you had. And it was really cool to see you go through that several month little transition where you started to add the steak, and, it wasn't great at first. And now, it looks like, things are going well for you. But one of the most interesting things that I saw, well, first of all, let me back up. Nowadays, there's lots of conversation about, like, why does the ketogenic diet work, or why does the carnivore diet work? Is it because of the low carbs? And, the low carbs definitely play a role, but I think what everybody agrees on, whether you're a high carb advocate or a low carb advocate, is that protein is the difference maker. If your protein is high enough, you will gain that satiety that you need, and you won't continue to eat. Because Mauro always says, it's hilarious, like, when you go and you sit down and you eat a plate of oatmeal, your body's going to be like, wrong answer, keep going, we didn't get what we need. And that's what we see. Like, we see nowadays, this little table is from Mickey Bendor. Someone Maura's size, who's about 135, 140 pounds, was eating, let me see here, it's 200 and about 240 to 250 pounds of meat, 230, whatever it was. And nowadays, the average, American is consuming 88 grams a day.
Wow.
So protein is very important, but also the importance of collagen and glycine, because we know that there have been studies, and this is why a lot of people start to advocate for lowering your protein, because if we're focusing on longevity, we see things like these rat studies where they decreased protein to 5% and it doubled the rats' lives. And that, they had a study that was done afterwards where they just balanced out that methionine, which is very high in meat, with the glycine that's in the connective tissue and in the bones, and you can get that from bone broth. I mean, it's so easy nowadays, whether or not you consume it from whole food sources, which I'll always argue for whole food sources, because number one, it's 10 times cheaper. Like, you go to the store, how weird is it that we don't have bone broths, which we can get bones for super cheap, but then we go to the store and we pay for like glucosamine because we have bad joints, and that's like 100 times more expensive. Your body's not absorbing it as much, and your body's not absorbing it because it's like ultra high heat, process that's doing that, when all you got to do is get it from some broth. But I mean, you can get it from collagen powder, you can get it from connective tissue. I know that Asian countries are still eating tendons. You can go to a Vietnamese restaurant and get a broth and have them add some tendons. I know all of this stuff sounds extremely weird to people, but I just ask everyone that if you want to try it, give it a chance. Maura, I just put something on Instagram from something she said 6 years ago, because we've been eating organ meat for a long time. And she said something like, I quoted her, she's like, it just looks like, and it smells like it doesn't want to be eaten. I don't want to eat this. And nowadays, like, we go on vacation in North Carolina, and luckily the last day we were there, we found a butcher We had them grind up some beef and liver. It was freaking delicious. And she's like, I can't wait to go home because I can't wait to get, you know, your organ meat burgers that you do for us. Because her body asks her for it. When you realize just how nutrient dense these foods are, your body will start to ask for it.
Well, that's how I started, you know, having the grass-fed beef. And when I had the steak the first time after KetoCon and being with everyone, I felt amazing the next day. You know, I went for a run, and you know, that's kind of what my motivation was. I don't want to take all these supplement pills when I could just eat a steak and get it from the steak. Because everything I'm deficient in when I do my lab work, it's like, all right, you know, your body needs iron, and needs B vitamins, and it needs, you know, all these things help detoxification. And it's so essential to get it from whole food sources rather than a supplement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree.
So and the bone broth too, I like, and that's what, you know, it's so easy to do. And I love Bonafide Provisions, and we just did a podcast with them, but the glycine, what's that?
No, I said fantastic. That's a great company.
Yeah.
It's a great, you know, if you're in a pinch, Sprouts has Bonafide, and you can grab their stuff. It's really, really good. And it's actually not terribly expensive like some of the other ones are.
Yeah. So number 3, our ancestors are focused on quality fat sources. So talk about this slide.
Such an important part, you know, because I think, you know, a lot of us, we start to talk about this protein and then we forget about the importance of fat. And you look at the rise of these really effective weight loss things like protein sparing modified fasts, where people are just cutting their fat drastically. And those things may work for a short period of time, but if we're talking about sustainable health, sustainable optimal hormone health, we need to, you know, have fat. And it was interesting again to see Mickey Bendor's work that he basically compiled some of these case studies that were done by anthropologists, whether they went. Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Oh no, sorry. Push button.
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. So I was saying, like, you know, these ancestral groups, it's interesting to see these people actually had, you know, experts among them who would inspect the animal for caul fat. And if the animal didn't have sufficient fat, they would throw out the animal. And when you think about the fact that unless they were starving, unless it was like really lean times and they weren't, you know, didn't have access to other animals, they prioritized the fat animals. And Mickey Bendor, in his presentation at last year's Carnivore conference, he spoke about the fact that if we look back, you know, once humans really started to figure out like how to hunt, we went for the largest animals, and we went for the megafauna, the mammoths, and the I think I put a picture in the next slide of I forget the other animal, but you'll see it's another huge animal. Oh, it's maybe the next one. No, never mind. We'll get to it, but you'll see these large animals, we ate them out of existence. Like they were such huge pieces of meat that we could, like, you know, preserve and eat as much as possible. But when they went away, we started to focus on prime animals. And when we say prime animals, we mean an animal that is at the top of its health, as fat as possible, as large as possible. And that was interesting to note because these people, even back then, understood the importance of fat. So you got to focus on protein, but you got to also make sure that you're eating adequate fats, whether that's coming from the animal alone or whether you need to supplement and cook it in tallow or lard. Like I can tell you that in my house, we save all of our bacon grease. We have duck fat, tallow, lard, leaf lard, ghee, what else? Butter. And so all of these things are just really, really good sources of fat. And I mean, everybody that I speak to that starts incorporating them, suet, you know, beef suet. So all of these things, they really just do feel better. And you mentioned women really do need fat. I mean, fat is just so important for hormone production.
Yeah, people forget that. And I think that's where we kind of probably had a lot more health issues since our whole fat phobia for women lasts, you know, 30, 50 years, but just how important hormones, steroid hormones are made from fat, and people forget. And the whole cholesterol fear drives me nuts. This whole nother episode is, oh, my cholesterol is high, I got to stop eating fat. I'm like, do you know the steroid chart, your hormones, what starts first? Cholesterol.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's go number 4. Our ancestors ate seasonally. This is an important
So
one.
so important because, you know, again, we have this world that we live in where we start to say, eat a ketogenic diet, eat a vegan diet, eat a carnivore diet, and that's that. And, you know, we're eating the same from January to December. We know that our microbiome, without us changing anything, our microbiomes actually change throughout the year. So in the wet season, you know, our microbiomes are going to be one way, in the dry season they're going to be another way. And that is that is our inheritance from our ancestors. They gave that to us. So we need to respect that because we are built like them. So in the spring and the summer, hunting and foraging for, you know, wild game, eggs, fish, seafood, and edible plants. In the autumn, they started to really get these crops, and they started to grab these veggies during the harvest, and they feasted on them as much as possible. Obviously not the same as the strawberries that you're eating nowadays, not the same as the squash and all the brassica, what would you say, brassica, like the children of the brassica plant, which is, you know, kale, broccoli, all of these things. Yeah. They were different back then, but even now, like, you know, just eating in season. Why is that important? Well, number one, you know, if you are eating in season, you're only going to be eating the food that's available to you locally. So you're not going to be having food flown in from South America and other places around the world, wasting tons of petroleum to do that. And of course, you're also going to be respecting the environment that you live in, which that environment, if you live in a place that doesn't have blueberries, but, you know, for 1 month a year, it doesn't make sense for you to eat blueberries the whole year. Of course, when you eat the liver and you eat the organs, your body can store those nutrients for the lean months. And of course, nowadays you know, I will say, you know, I eat liver year round, because the other important thing to notice is, like, okay, fine, we're going to be ancestral, but we also have to pay attention to our lifestyles, and the fact that our lifestyles are, number one, way more complicated, and we're training hard and we're lifting hard, but we're also exposed to much more toxins, and we're going to need more nutrition to help us with that. And yeah, so nowadays we're always eating for the winter. There's this really interesting guy, I forgot his name, for winter, and he uses the acorn and the squirrel. And, you know, the acorn is typically a pretty high carb and high fat meal or food, and that's to fatten it up. And nowadays we are, you know, perpetually eating, combining fats and carbohydrates, and that's the reason why we are where we are with our health.
Yeah, if we just think about avoiding packaged foods too, you know,
gosh,
that's
yes.
like anything that comes in a package is not going to be natural whole foods. So if you are trying to just start simple and eat real food is kind of the first step, if you're not ready to just go full carnivore, animal based. But I think, you know,
I would totally, sorry, Sarah, what were you going to say?
But just what you're saying is that, you know, eat by the season and eat berries when they're out in August, and don't have them coming from Mexico in December, and eating foods that's available. But if you choose foods that are whole foods and in season, you know, you'll make better choices than going for stuff that's year round, that's in a package with a barcode that has a big, huge ingredient list. That's kind of the main thing I think people, where they should start if they're trying to go down a new journey and change what they're eating and how they're eating. But start with, you know, the real food. Get rid of all the packaged foods. And you're not going to hear that because people don't make $1 billion, $1 billion in the food industry if we buy real food.
Yeah, and like, I am pretty sure that even the most staunch carnivore advocates would be extremely happy if we could just get half of this country to say no to kids menus, and to say no to packaged foods and crap, beige, bland foods, because our health will turn around. If I see, you know, imagine if we see 150, 175 million people in this country all of a sudden switching to a meat, potatoes, and broccoli diet, they will still do better. They will still do much better. Okay, the movement piece. This is so important. So, like, you know,
Number 5.
very, very little sitting. You know, if you are sitting in an office, put a reminder or a timer for every 60 to 90 minutes for you to get up and walk around for 5 to 10 minutes. You know, people think, oh, I'm in the middle of work, I don't want to mess with my productivity, but there's research that shows that having these breaks is actually helping you to be more productive. So not only are you saving your back, saving your hip flexors, moving blood through your system, getting stuff going through your lymphatic system, but you might also, you know, impact your productivity. Of course, short bouts of sprinting during hunts. So you do want to include a little bit of high intensity intervals, consistent movement throughout the day. I know you know this. I know Stephanie knows this. You know, the MAF method, maximum aerobic function, is a great way, a modern way for us to respect our body's ability to oxidize fat as long as we're not stressing it too much. And so we should be spending 80 to 90% of our time doing aerobic work. And that even includes people like me who want to build muscle. Like, I go on walks all the time. I get a minimum of like 12,000 steps a day. And it's just so important. Of course, this is what I spoke about before, the, you know, the sedentary athlete syndrome, which is basically just people going for an hour and then sitting back down.
Yeah, I go to the gym and lift weights 5:30 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I think, you know, you see all these people, and I always think that in my head, are they going to go and sit in a chair all day? And you still need to get up and move. You know, I'm standing right now and stretching while we're talking, but you know, I'm working at home. I have stairs. I can run up the stairs, come back down, you know, just do different intervals. And I learned from, you know, Ben Greenfield years ago, how he used to have his pull-up station, do so many pull-ups and squats every time, you know, he would go out. I mean, that's if you work out at home, it might be easier when you work at home, but to fit your little workouts in. But if you're at the office, I was to say, like, put a timer on your computer. So every hour you get up and you go down the stairs or go down the hallway or something. But I think that's a big area people don't think about. And that's part of my holistic method is movement, is that we got to add this, you know, mobility and get up and move more during the day, because people never sat all day long. So it's a good one. You have that in there. Okay. Number 6, our ancestors had a close connection to nature in the environment.
Wow, there is a book on Audible that is for free, and it's called The 3-Day, I forget what it is, but it's basically a case study where they followed people who went out into nature for 3 days, and they just saw unbelievable improvements. And like, even when you go to places where there's no Wi-Fi, there's no EMF, these people are healthier. And so if we can unplug as much as possible, get away from, you know, these artificial light sources, especially at night, you know, we're connecting with nature, we're walking outside and not just on a treadmill. I understand it's the winter right now, so a lot of places are still cold, but if we can get outside as much as possible, of course, we respect the animal, we use its hide, we use the plants, we use them as medicine. And then, of course, the intelligent use of arable lands for crops. So we're not trying to change the nature of a land from one to another, which is what got us into this place now, where we just irrigated everything and we just try to grow crops everywhere. We should be using forage. We should be using livestock to help us keep the soil healthy. And then, of course, they had little to no environmental toxins. So nowadays we have to be aware of those toxins, things like pollutants, things like heavy metals, things like, of course, glyphosate. Yeah. And the plastics and the BPA and the phthalates. We have to, you know, I would recommend for everyone to take a look at what they have. Like, do you have plastic? Get rid of it. Do you have fragrances or cleaning products, personal use products? Those are low-hanging fruit because you use them every single day, and you're putting on that deodorant, and it's wonder why you feel like crap. So we have to just try to emulate them so that we can, you know, get optimum health.
So I'll add to that. People can look on your products and look at ewg.com, I think it is, and you can check if the products that you use in your household are high toxic ingredients.
Ooh, great.
And that's a good source. And there's an app. So if you're at the store and you want to know what you're buying. And then I was going to post on my Facebook page today that I was at Bartell's, our local drugstore, and I found this at the grocery store too. There's people don't like to buy natural or organic toxic-free products.
Of course.
Stores. So I found them at the end of the aisle on the clearance rack. So if you want to get,
Oh, that's awesome.
I found this, I forget the brand, the seaweeds, a scrub, walnut scrub for a shower. And then I found they had the detergents and all the scent free. It's like, oh my gosh, it was all half off because no one's buying it. So like, if you want to buy, you can get it on sale if you look at the clearance section, because no one else wants to buy the toxic free products in the grocery stores and drugstores. So check your local clearance section in the grocery stores. It's funny.
That's a good one. I want to add also ajconsultingco.com. That's Anthony J. He's an epigeneticist for the Mayo Clinic. He's a good friend of ours. He wrote Estrogeneration. He has a section on what I use. And if you just want to just be one of those people and you don't even have to do the research, because Anthony has done that for you. You can look on there. And also, I know people don't like to use natural products because a lot of time they don't perform as well. So you have to look for products that not only are natural, but they're actually worth your money. So that's, I think, one of the problems too. But absolutely, get the natural stuff. It's so much better. You'll notice that you don't have to, if you're healthy, you don't got to cover everything up with a bunch of fragrance and scents. Like, your body won't stink.
Yeah, I know. It's true. When you don't have a clogged liver and you don't have all these toxins coming out of your skin.
Yep.
It stink. All right. So this one is Dr. Kate Shanahan, who we've talked about a lot over the years. Her 4 pillars of traditional diets. I have this book somewhere on my shelf here, but that's a great book if people want to read Dr. Kate Shanahan. She's been talking about this for a long time and has done a ton of research, and she's a real medical doctor. So people that are kind of, oh, I don't believe it, they're not doctors, you might want to look at these people like Dr. Kate Shanahan and other top leaders in this area working on whole food and the animal-based diet.
Yeah, Deep Nutrition is a foundational book for anybody who wants to get a real good grasp on a non-biased, non-keto, non-carnivore, non-vegan view of how to eat. And these 4 pillars, fresh foods, real foods, meat on the bone. What else did I, fermented and sprouted foods. So if you're having nuts, sprout the nuts. You get rid of that phytic acid. You lower the lectins. Ferment your food. So good to ferment foods. You're eating something that's actually alive and feeding your gut. Meat on the bone, again, you get the glycine, you get all the stuff from, and of course you get more flavor as well. And eating organs, finding interesting and unique ways to include organs into your diet in a way that's sustainable for you and where you don't have to hold your nose when you're eating something.
Yeah. And then environmental toxins are again on here that we talked about, that obviously, people, this is a huge area people need to really look at, because when you're trying to change what you're eating and get healthy, you got to look at your environmental toxins, your household cleaning ingredients, your detergents, your soaps, your Febreze, the spray. I mean, I go to my mom's house, they're not watching this, like it's like a Febreze plug in every room, like, oh my, and you get so sensitive to those smells when you take them out of your house. And I have my essential oil diffuser on here. I do that instead of having these chemical products, and then you realize how much you are the sensitivity to those toxic chemicals when you remove them. So it's a big part of our being healthy.
Yeah, I mean, even Desmond, like when he goes to my mother-in-law's house, he's like, oh my gosh, what is that? Like, it stinks so much. It's so strong. And, you're absolutely right about like the, what was the part? I just lost my train of thought. These people are eating the right thing. I was thinking about this on Sunday. I was walking through Costco and I was seeing, why is there so many bottles of grapeseed oil? Like, who's buying this stuff? How is this even happening? And then I get to the register and I see the person in front of me with two big old bottles of Crisco in plastic. And I remember, like, if you would have seen like a Costco haul for me, like when I first started keto, you would have seen me buying those big plastic bottles of coconut oil. But now, as you know, when you know better, you do better. I'm not asking everyone to like do this right off the bat, but at least be aware of it and try to get to a point where you minimize this other stuff, because chances are if you're not seeing the results you want, it's some of these other things, and it's not just the food.
Yeah. Buy your coconut oil in glass, not plastic.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And then your last one here is something I just was writing a blog about and helping coaching my health coaching clients minimize input and disconnect regularly. And I think, you know, a big thing that will hopefully happen more this year, and Brad Kearns and I just did a podcast on trends coming up. And I think having these Apple Watches and the 5G Wi-Fi and all this accessibility that everyone's always on, and that's kind of my presentation last year, low carb cruise, is this chronic stressors. And I think learning how to unplug and say after 7 p.m., I'm not checking email, I'm not looking at text, I'm, you know, office closed, and set boundaries of how or when you are connected to your world and know when to unplug. And I think that's so much of optimizing your health from a cellular level too, is in your gut and your brain, that you got to work on unplugging more often.
Yeah, I mean, 5G is such a disaster. It's going to be everywhere. You're not going to be able to get away from it. So there are some really cool products that I've been looking into that can help you like minimize the damage from 5G. But
The last, can't hear you. There you go.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, put your stuff on airplane mode when possible. But yeah, let's talk about these practical tips, because I want to add one more to this before I get into these, because this grassland nutrition, what I told you guys about, like, if you don't like this stuff, another intro is getting these products now that are coming out, like dried organs, that if you were to take them out of the package and eat them, it'll taste like dog food. But if you put them into a bone broth, it actually tastes freaking good. And it has like I said, the consistency of like a mushroom.
Oops.
So
no
problem. I know what's on the slide. So organ meat burgers is a way that we do it. We like to grind up beef, liver, kidney, heart, and bacon, and we turn them into burgers. You see that there, the instructions. You also see pork liver pate in the middle there. Those are chicken hearts there on the grill. King Oscar cod livers are delicious. They actually do not taste like cod liver oil. They taste delicious, and they're super high fat. And then another great entry point is this U.S. Wellness Meats Braunschweiger and liverwurst. They're basically organ sausages. It's about 50% beef trim, and depending on which one you get, if you get the liverwurst, it's going to be liver, kidney, and heart. And if you get the Braunschweiger, it's just going to be organ meat and liver. So these are all great ways to incorporate organs, or you can freeze them. Allie Miller's, she has her frozen liver pills. Those are fantastic. You just take the liver, cut it into chunks, freeze it. And if you're concerned with toxins or anything like that, let it sit in the freezer for 2 weeks, then pop it like a pill and pop it like a multivitamin.
Yeah. So are you strict on not having any vegetables, and, you know, you're not doing any cheese, dairy from animals, or are you just strict meat?
So dairy, I minimize as much as possible. When I do have dairy, I notice that I do much better if it's organic and grass-fed. And, you know, obviously best case scenario is raw, which we have raw A2 milk here, and we have raw A2 cream, which is just unbelievable, amazing, so delicious. As far as vegetables, I am definitely not anti-vegetable. Like yesterday, I was actually very sad because we have this company, Eating Evolved, that we're getting meals from for the kids. And one of my sons like left a bunch of broccolini, and I wanted the broccolini so bad, but I can't this month because I'm on this meat and bricks challenge where all we're doing is eating meat and keto bricks. But generally speaking, I will eat my vegetables. I mean, not because I feel like I need them, although I do think that it's important to bring in some fiber at least occasionally, for the reasons we spoke about, you know, as far as like packaging toxins up and helping you eliminate them. But no, I love fermented foods. Like those will be my first choice, like kimchi, sauerkraut, apple cider vinegar, cooking stuff with apple cider vinegar, brewing kombucha at home, and what else? And then I also use vegetables as a supplement in the form of, like, you know, whether they're my UCAN super starch for pre-workout, or even other you know, carb sources for my workouts and stuff. And then of course the last one, which is not really a plant or an animal, is honey. I love honey, and I love mushrooms too, which are not a plant or animal. So those two, you know, you can kind of, depending on which carnivore zealot Facebook group you're on, you might be kicked out of the group and kicked off the team. But if you're with me, don't worry, I won't kick you off. You can eat your mushrooms and your honey.
Well, that's, I mean, I always have a little bit of issue with it. I understand I feel better with me if I take my digestive aids, or else I'm actually throwing up and I'm nauseous if I don't have my HCl. So my body's kind of healing, but I need to take digestive enzymes and HCl, betaine, or else it doesn't break down properly. So I feel like if I just was strict, as I said, I grew up, people read my book, Life is Not a Race. I used to diet all the time. And if I just do strict carnivore, to me, if you have a history of dieting, it's not a good thing to be strict after, I mean, maybe like a challenge everyone's doing this month, but I find I like to have a little bit of mushrooms and onions on a steak. Or I had yesterday a grass-fed burger with some zucchini noodles with bacon fat. And, you know, it was really good. And I threw some walnuts on it. And so for me, just to do strict carnivore, I understand the benefits and the nutrients. And I don't think you have that chart you showed us at the other seminar of all the vitamins that you get from meat.
That one is so good.
It was so good. And I think people need to understand, yes, you can stay, you know, if that works for you, be strict carnivore and just see how you feel. Like everyone's doing this 30-day January challenge, or what's it called? Carnivore. I know Stephanie and other people.
Yeah, there's a carnivore, World Carnivore Month.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on, and I think it's good to do, and especially if you have health issues. Kind of another question there, what do you find or hear about people with health issues that get, you know, repaired or rebuild their health from doing a strict carnivore program? Have you heard a lot of health benefit stories? Because I know keto, people say a lot, but carnivore, it seems like people's gut health or immune system is improved, which is 80% in your gut, but anything there?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that the ones that, if we're comparing carnivore to keto, first I'll say my experience is that I found that carnivore was so much better at keeping my cravings down than keto was. I always say this, like, I found a greater difference between keto and carnivore than I found between, you know, the standard diet and keto, as far as my cravings went. And then the other thing is, you mentioned, is, you know, carnivore diets are fantastic elimination diets. So you see people that, you know, hit their head against the wall with the ketogenic diet. They still have their autoimmune stuff. They might still be dealing with gut issues and gut dysbiosis. And then they find that they go carnivore and that gets fixed. The other thing is, you know, you mentioned the importance of, like, you know, keeping it varied and for you. And I think that has a lot to do with people's personalities. Like, if you see, like, the addict brain, which I have an addict brain 100%, is going to be more of an abstainer versus a moderator. And interestingly, all or none. So those type of people might do very well with the carnivore diet, whereas the moderator is going to be, like, miserable, and they're going to be like, why can't I have a few bites of this or a few bites of that, when, you know, that's like those few bites are going to be nothing. And that's Nauta too, believe it or not, you know?
Really? Yeah, I think I know people that have addictive personalities that, you know, over exercisers, or they, you know, alcohol they can't do, or food, you know, food eating, emotional eating issues. And I think there's a lot of people that need more structure, and they can't, you know, just being, I only can have these foods work better, as you said for yourself. You know, if you just say, I'm only eating carnivore, I'm going to avoid everything else. Sometimes it's easier. And I think it's easier to figure out, if you don't like cooking, preparing meals and thinking, you know, oh, what am I going to eat today? It's simple. And it does make it less stressful of, you know, when you're eating out, there's options everywhere. So people always think, oh, how is it sustainable? But it is easier. And I think it's cheaper to do these programs, you know, if it's keto, carnivore, because I end up if I eat later in the day and I'm full, so I might just have that one meal a day, maybe a snack or something smaller meal. But I find, as you said, is more satisfying and filling. I have no cravings for anything and I don't want to eat anything more. So I think that's a benefit for sure doing these type of higher protein and fat programs for my own experience.
And the other thing that you mentioned about like keeping it simple is, I mean, that's actually, we've seen that in research. Like we've seen sensory specific satiety is a really good tool in helping us. There's something called the monotony effect, is when you eat the same foods, you tend not to overeat. But when you're constantly introducing more variety and more hyper palatable foods, that's where you overeat. And whether or not, well, we know that we have a unique metabolic advantage when we lower carbs, because we make our fat cells way more inefficient. So it's like the amount of energy going in is nowhere near the amount of energy going out. So it's like you're sitting in your car and you're revving the engine with the car in park. And so you do have that metabolic advantage, but then you also are controlling your calories because you don't overeat. And that's one of the things that Maura says is like, when I'm strict carnivore, sometimes I can't eat enough. And I mean, for some people, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, working on finding an eating plan that works for you, paying attention to how you feel and how your digestion improves and gut health and bloating and burping and gas and all of that side effects that people think is normal. And as I'm doing FDN practitioner, nutritional therapy practitioner, health coaching, it is, you know, teaching people that's not normal. And if you're eating the wrong foods, if you don't feel good afterward, you don't have the extra energy, and you shouldn't be running to the bathroom having disaster pants or, you know, burping and gassing and bloated stomach. So I think people need to go, okay, let's reassess what I'm eating, but also, as we keep talking about, is how are you eating? Are you sitting down, unplugged, focused on your food, chewing your food 20 to 30 times, and not doing 20 things at once, and tasting your food? And especially protein's harder to break down. So you need to possibly take, you know, HCl, hydrochloric acid supplements as myself, and digestive enzymes to help break it down, but chewing your food and not taking a big bite and swallowing it, and, you know, working at the same time, or walking or driving your car, or, you know, focus and be in the moment, I think is a huge part.
I mean, we're telling this to our boys all the time, because my oldest will open up the kitchen and open up the fridge and pull something out and start eating it. And I'm like, get to the table, sit your butt down, breathe through your nose, do not open your mouth, and focus on your food. Everything else can wait. You know, that's the thing.
For kids too. Yeah. They're always want to, like you said before we podcast, they want to go out and play, and they want to go do stuff and to sit. And I forgot about this tip, is take 3, you know, stop and take 3, inhale and exhale, you know, 3 deep, long inhale and exhale, and nasal breathing, and reset and get in the rest and digest the nervous system, parasympathetic. And because you can't digest your food if you're in the sympathetic nervous system. So I think it's an important part of eating. So any other questions? So we didn't get any in here, but let me kind of go into your slides of where to find you. That was our last one. So this is my slide. I'm focusing on health coaching people now myself, doing 3 months, 90-day programs, and working on identifying their external and internal hidden stressors with functional lab testing, and kind of being a health detective, putting, you know, these clues together and create a program for you, what we call an FDN Address for Health Success program, working on your D is diet and your rest, and E, exercise, stress, and supplementation based on, you know, all this information. So it's bio individuality and your unique self we're looking at. And I love to take people's genetics too and look at, all right, you know, use DNA Fit or some other programs, upload your raw data from 23andMe or Ancestral DNA, and let's really individualize, you know, what you should be eating, doing a food sensitivity lab we include in one of the 5 labs I do, and also doing some other labs to look at your mitochondria health. I've been focusing on a lot. So if you feel like, you know, you're trying to figure out how to improve the whole you from the inside out, sometimes nutrition is where we start, and working on slowing down, focus on eating. Like you talked about mobility. You talked a lot about my holistic method is coaching people and all those different things are on the same page. But stress is everywhere. And that includes, I did a podcast the other day on emotional stress. If you're negative, negative energy and your environmental toxins, it's just as bad. So really, thank you, Danny, for what you've been doing and, getting this information out there and not just talking about nutrition, eating carnivore, those to tell, but there's more to it. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I'd be so freaking bored if that's all I spoke about anyway. So this other stuff is like, it's so important. And, I wore a continuous blood glucose monitor last year for a few months. And I noticed that stress was so much bigger of a factor than what I ate. I would, my sons would get into a fight, and then all of a sudden I would break it up, and I'm like looking at my CGM and I'm at 120 blood sugar. And then I just do some breathing and I bring myself down to 68 within a few minutes. So you have to be aware of that stress. Trust us when we tell you, like, you got to be aware of it. You got to be mindful of it. And you got to be mindful of your thoughts, not only what's in your mind, but also what comes out of your mouth. I totally agree with that.
So true. I know. I love that. I heard something about that on the mitochondrial summit. It's like, oh my gosh, she was talking about sports and performance and mitochondria health. And it was all about emotional toxins, how we talk to ourselves. Like, blew me away. So I took notes and I did my own podcast on my show talking about, for athletes, because we're competitive and type A and we want to do our best. And if you have a bad day, what do we do?
Beat yourself up. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, emotional stressors can impact your health and your gut health and everything along with it. So we're out of time, guys, but we'll put the link and put it on our YouTube channel. And so everyone else can listen to the recording that was not able to make it today, but thank you. And you're off to speaking somewhere. Where you're speaking tomorrow?
So I am leaving tomorrow to Omaha, Nebraska for the Omaha Keto Summit. And I'll actually be talking about building muscle, but focusing on stress. So focusing a lot on cortisol and ways to manage cortisol, which sometimes includes carbohydrates. Of course, it includes, adaptogenic mushrooms and adaptogenic herbs, but carbs are also very effective. You notice you get a nice little insulin spike and it brings cortisol down. And if you're someone with inverted cortisol, where your cortisol is low in the morning and high at night, it makes sense maybe to intermittent fast, but then bring in some carbs for lunch and then bring in some carbs for dinner so that you can get that deep restorative sleep, because you're not going to build muscle if your cortisol's through the roof, and you're definitely not going to burn fat. So really excited about that one.
I think that's a huge topic. And I think it's funny because everyone's so carb phobic in this industry. So it's good to go, okay, it's okay if you're an athlete, we're a little different and women are different than men. And I keep talking about mitochondrial health is I believe Ari Whitten's information, the energy blueprint. I'm fascinated by his research and kind of going to tie that into my KetoCon presentation and low carb cruise, that it's not just an HPA axis, it's mitochondria function that's going to be contributing to having the oxidative stress, getting the mitochondria damage, leading to fatigue. So it's not just looking at our adrenals, but the whole picture, and the whole athlete is just all this combined. So exciting stuff this year for all of us. So I'm glad to join you and see you soon at the conferences, and we'll be in touch. Have fun.
Thank you so much, Debbie.
All right. End our